Haaland against Southampton is triple captaincy material, just like he was in Game Week 2, where he scored 17 points against Ipswich at home. We can benchmark him against two other standard players, which are Palmer against Newcastle at home and Mbeumo against Ipswich at home, which aren't bad options by the way, and if you don't own Haaland, you're going to get to see who's the better pick out of those two. Taking a look at the non-penalty stats per 90 minutes, it's actually Palmer who's ahead of Haaland. Haaland was miles ahead of him, but of course he's blanked 3 games in a row, and like I said, for the past few game weeks, his stats will regress, and they have done. To be fair, I expect his expected numbers to go up a little bit, but his return points to stay roughly where they are. I understand why the last 3 matches might put someone off, but be careful not to fall for the recency bias, and to be fair, he did score a couple of goals in the Champions League, and he didn't even complete the 90 minutes. If he did, he probably would have got a hat-trick, because City won a penalty. As for Palmer, with him getting the extra point for every goal scored, and the XG in the calculations, that does bunk him up a little bit, and it does favour him from an FPL perspective, regardless if the underlying stats are similar or not. He's still a good option, and he's been consistent since the start of last season. Whilst Mbeumo's overperformed his underlying stats just like the other 2 players, he's actually nowhere near them, and you can see that in the bar chart. As for the set pieces, all 3 players on the shortlist are on pens. Haaland takes the occasional direct free kick. It's a lot more often with De Bruyne being out though. Palmer and Mbeumo are set piece specialists for their respective clubs. They take direct free kicks, indirect free kicks, and corners. Their goal threat this game week is nowhere near as high as Haaland's though. He's got the highest anytime goal scorer odds by far, with 71%. And when you combine that with his anytime assister odds, which aren't too far behind the other 2 players, especially 1% behind Mbeumo, he's got the highest anytime return odds, with only a 20% chance of blanking. If you've not got Haaland, it is worth noting that Palmer's ahead of Mbeumo on both markets. He's ahead of him on the points projections as well. However, the headliner is Haaland yet again. He's got 10.1 projected points on Fantasy Football Fix and 9 on FPL Review as well. As for the quality of the opposition's defence, obviously Palmer's got the more difficult fixture against Newcastle. I wouldn't say it's necessarily difficult from an attacking perspective, but of course playing against Southampton and Ipswich are much more favourable fixtures. It's difficult to decide who's actually got the easier fixture out of Haaland and Mbeumo. Southampton have conceded more goals, but then Ipswich have been expected to concede more goals, and there's not much between either of the metrics. But one thing I will say is that the expected goals are better at projecting the future goals, the actual goals themselves. So I'd say Ipswich is actually a slightly easier fixture, and in Game Week 2, Haaland did make the most of that, but there's not much between them. And to be fair, the sample size of data being 8 matches isn't the biggest. A lot could change, and there's not much between them. Before we conclude, we're going to carry out a quick risk assessment, and when we conclude, we know who the best captain's going to be, but we don't know if we're going to triple captain him or not. And then of course, if you've not got Haaland, I'm going to tell you who the best is out of the other 2 as well. Palmer and Mbeumo have had a week's worth of rest. That's because Brentford don't feature in the European competitions. Chelsea do, but Palmer's been excluded from the squad. As for Haaland, he's not even had 3 full recovery days, and he did feature for nearly 90 minutes. Whilst that's not ideal, he has still got 88 expected minutes, which is just as reliable as anyone else on the shortlist. Now it's time to conclude. Before we get onto the triple captaincy, if you don't own Haaland, I think Palmer's the better option. I know that Mbeumo's got the easier fixture, which brings it quite close together between the 2 of them, but Palmer's higher ceiling and what he's capable of providing, I would be jumping on him if I didn't own Haaland. I think the pair of them in combination have been decent competitors this game week. I always put on the screen what the best captain's got over the other 2 players on the shortlist, and the list on the screen actually isn't that big this game week, but that doesn't take anything away from Haaland being triple captaincy material. The question is, do we play that triple captainship? In Game Week 2, I said not to play it, and I do think it's important that we don't fall for the outcome bias. He wasn't projected to get 17 points or anywhere near that. It's quite similar to what it is this game week. I said no back then, and now have I changed my mind? Well, when it comes to the double game weeks, the projected points tend to be higher, probability tends to be higher, you can double the output. Don't forget you can get up to 180 minutes out of a player plus the additional 2 appearance points, so that's a higher floor and a higher ceiling. We might not necessarily captain Haaland or Salah. There should be a decent chance of it being a double game week for either of those 2 players, and even if it's another player, there should be a good opportunity there to have a higher ceiling than Haaland for 90 minutes. So whilst I say all of that, it's not a bad opportunity to play triple captainship if you really want to do it. Don't just copy me. My opinion is, I feel like there's going to be a better opportunity. I'm not 100% about that because we can't see to the future, but I feel like there could be a better opportunity than this, and I'm putting more value on that. Thanks for watching. If you want to support the channel, I've put the Patreon link in the description. There's also exclusive benefits on there for you.